Hey, this is Stephen Platinum with Platinum versus AEW Dark. It's AEW Dark number 46. Sorry about the little hum in the background. I'm in a different kind of location recording this. It's not the wonderful, blissful quiet of my house, but I'm outdoors. I'm next to a pool. It's a sunny day in Florida, and I'm in a really gorgeous spot. That's just enough in the shade that this isn't ridiculous. So forgive me for the little background hum. I'll do my best to speak closely to the microphone. Taz and Tony are our commentators, and let me say for the record that this Tony Schiavone is my favorite Tony Schiavone. He was really on point. Just a real good energy to the show. I think he's done a great job of sort of being the right kind of self-deprecating, understanding what AEW is trying to do, and does perhaps the best job, and that's saying something because I also like Taz a great deal, at really promoting their product. So I just wanted to sort of make that known right off the rip that I think Tony Schiavone just does a really, really phenomenal job. Just really great. Here's something that I found noteworthy and interesting. So AEW Dark gets about 200,000 views eventually, usually within a day or two. Usually there's about 15,000 people watching live. I always check in on this kind of stuff. And then there's about 200,000 people who end up watching an episode of AEW Dark. You know what that Women's Cup tag tournament thing, you know what their show last week did? 500,000. So that's interesting. I think that alludes to the fact that the matches aren't foregone conclusions. Not that I'm saying AEW Dark should change their format, but I just find it interesting that even if something is on the surface competitive, it's much more compelling to people. Perhaps AEW Dark should in advance promote the competitive matches. Maybe that's something that could help a lot. Just a thought there. All right, so we've got 9 matches. The show ran about an hour and a half. That's right at the threshold where I start going like, this is too fucking long. But the show was fine. I'm going to do my 3-check system for all of the matches except for the last one, because SCU versus Butcher and Blade, I would call that not only main event worthy, but also really competitive match where it's not a foregone conclusion. Both SCU and Butcher and Blade are tag teams of note. They promote throughout the evening the Tag Team Appreciation Day that's happening, well, today on AEW Dynamite. Number of tag matches involving the Young Bucks and the best version of the Dark Order tag team outside of Brody Lee and Colt Cabana, the one with Evil Uno, etc., etc., and Jurassic Express, the two that have a shot at winning, in a tag team title match against Page and Omega. And then an also appearance by the Rock and Roll Express, who are going to be joining Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. Pretty cool stuff. Really good. Again, AEW learning to really emphasize their strengths that they have. And they have 2 really notable strengths over WWE right now. 3, if I'm being honest. One is a much more of a fun vibe than any of the WWE shows. The other one is obviously their tag team division. And then the other one is, I think Moxley is 5 to 10 times the champion as far as how he represents his brand and how he presents himself over any other quote-unquote world champion in the WWE. I fucking said it. Match number 1, Lee Johnson against Rey Fenix. My note to Lee Johnson, if you're going to be part of the MJF campaign, then you should go all out with it. Having a little button on your pants, maybe they were going for something there that was supposed to be funny. It was not. I think Lee Johnson has to be an active campaigner for MJF. Down to, if they could do it, a ridiculous thing where he wears his suit as a corporate suit and then tears it off completely to wrestle. But everything should just be MJF 2020 right now. Just my opinion. If they're going to make him part of that angle in any part, big or small, he should play to the hilt. Rey Fenix, a bunch of nice sequences here. The Lee Johnson striking sequence in particular I thought really worked. Rey Fenix, as he's prone to do, a couple of sloppy moments. He gave us a little tightrope walk when he got to the ring because I guess he wasn't going to do that tightrope walk kick in the match, which is fine. But there was a couple weird sequences, a couple weird moves where like Rey Fenix sat him on the apron and then came to do this like diving rolling kick thing, and it just didn't look great. But when Rey Fenix does something that looks great, it looks spectacular. That's what you're going to get, and you have to know that. And that muscle buster spinny into a pin finish is just delightful. This match got all 3 check marks. Rey Fenix obviously won the match to go over. He looked good in the process, and when he didn't, it was his own fault, damn it. And Lee Johnson was made to look pretty good. But again, Lee emphasized the fucking MJF 2020 thing, and that's my main note there. Match number 2, Shawn Spears against Alex Chamberlain. Alex Chamberlain, big old dude, first appearance on AEW, especially AEW Dark. In between that, we got the Scorpio Sky video. Now, they had promised at the top of the show, we're going to hear from Scorpio Sky, but it was a video package, which I find a little weird and perhaps a touch just disingenuous, but it's whatever. And again, if you're going to promote it at the top, in theory, it's because you think people are going to want to see Scorpio Sky speak. I know these are nitpicky points, but AEW is at the point where most of their stuff is nuts and bolt tightening, not huge wholesale changes. Like WWE is at the point where they need to like turn the entire large cruise ship in a different direction. Whereas AEW is at the point where it's small nuances and little adjustments. So yes, I am nitpicky. People often complain like, you're so picky about AEW. It's because I like the product so much. And by the way, if you think I take it easy on WWE, listen to my Raw thing. God, usually the first 20 minutes is me ranting and raving about how they have giant structural problems. So AEW is doing fine. I do continually use the phrase, they need an adult in the room to like catch this stuff. But it is what it is. Shawn Spears, again, nothing wrong with the ring work, nothing wrong with the thing. I did find my mind wandering during this match, not because it was boring or anything like that, but because I was trying to imagine a better world for Shawn Spears and Tully Blanchard. Because it doesn't appear that it feels like they're in a holding pattern of building Shawn Spears up slowly through these wins on AEW Dark, but they don't really have a design for him. And I think the reason for that is that the gimmick doesn't lend itself towards something bigger. It needs big time booking help. And there's nothing wrong with the gimmick per se, but it needs to be made into a bigger deal. Loose things that I thought of just in the course of watching this match that I see here in my notes. What if the Dark Order, because they're caught in a position where they're not really advancing, starts leasing out Shawn Spears, like basically hiring him to kind of bolster their roster and help out. And Tully Blanchard's sort of caught in this too. Sort of this idea of like Tully Blanchard and Brody Lee kind of coming together for this like sinister thing, and then Colt Cabana further having to decide like, oh boy, what am I willing to do to remain part of this thing now that my career is going better thanks to the Dark Order. Anyway, just throwing it out there, they perhaps already have a plan, and I would be interested in seeing it, because I think a lot of Shawn Spears, I love his running D Death Valley driver finisher. I don't think we got to see him do the glove thing. I think they might have cut that off early. Or they might have said, that's kind of ridiculous that we would let this guy continually beat up people that he's already beaten after a match. Wouldn't we fine him or stop that? We have a commercial for the figures. Again, looks stellar. And I see that the figures are actually in the stores now after a bit of a delay. I took a picture once. I might put it up here. I probably won't, though, it was interesting that in all the Walmarts, because part of one of my many hustles is I have to go to various Walmarts to look at things. And I would look at what kind of shelf space, because that's the real key. What kind of shelf space are you getting in the toy department? And AEW shares an equal amount of shelf space with WWE. Their titles are AEW, their title belts are there. Their rings are there, and they get at least as much space as WWE, if not more. And then the figures, there were already like peg hooks in place with the labels for the AEW figures before the AEW figures came out. Very good sign for AEW. Who's ever doing the job for them of getting them the shelf space, I know how important that is. If you ever read the book Console Wars, depicting how Sega broke Nintendo's stranglehold on the video game industry, you'll see that a lot of the fights take place. It's about shelf space in stores. And so AEW, I see you. You're doing a great job in that regard. Match. This one, I would give a check to Shawn Spears because he won. I would give a check that Alex Chamberlain was sufficiently made to look good, but Shawn Spears didn't really look spectacular in this. They didn't really put over a viewpoint of what is Shawn Spears as far as wrestling style goes. We're just getting a sort of a litany of moves, but they're figuring it out. We get a promotion for All Out on September 5th as well as the figure commercial. My notes are very jumbled on this, my apologies. Match number 3, Mbadu making his debut. Boy, did they go out of their way to make him look like this tree trunk that couldn't be moved. And he has a great deal of enthusiasm from his entrance, which I like. Shawn Dean continues to refine his game. I'm excited to see the two of them teaming up against Billy and Austin. I'm curious about the decisions that Billy Gunn will make. Billy Gunn, these are small things that show how smart he is. Because he knows part of his deal is what an amazing body he has, he keeps a shirt on until he takes it off, and it feels like a big moment in the match. Again, just a very savvy, smart thing Billy Gunn's doing. Keep a wave what you want to see, and then I show you what you want to see, and it makes a bigger impression. He's very good at being presentational. He's a true pro. Billy also takes the heat because he wants his kid to look as good as possible. I see you. Shawn Dean and Mbadu, very good, solid ring work. And then Austin comes in, and I hate his hip toss neck breaker thing he uses as a finisher, but I will say Shawn Dean took it way better than other people have and made it look really great. 3 checks. Billy and Austin pick up the win. They look good in the process. I get the story of what they're trying to tell. I get that they're trying to push Austin. Billy gets his stuff in without taking too much emphasis away from his kid. And I think it was a great look. Billy's the one who bumped around and made Mbadu look very imposing, and Shawn Dean always does great work. So we've got a 3rd check on that one. 4th match. In between, we get an MJF promo. Awesome. Really, AEW is figuring out how to promote their other shows, and they're beginning to work in synergy much more with the different things together. Really, really great. I'm glad to see it. Michael Stevens, great surprise. He's coming here, and boy, he's working it from the beginning. Michael Stevens works that gimmick as hard as you possibly can in a match that is a foregone conclusion match. And he certainly does it. I was looking at the comments, and people had, of course, negative things to say, #WrestlingFans. But boy, he was really working it, including that silly comeback. But his ring work and his execution of moves and stuff was super solid. Of course, he's working with Kip Sabian, who's really, really great. And Penelope Ford has a nice interplay with Michael Stevens. I found Michael Stevens' performance overall to be good, but not great. I want to see more out of Michael Stevens. Even more, find a way to go over the top with it. I'm talking Sal Rinauro levels of going over the top with it. Why not? You're already 75% of the way there. Kip Sabian finishes him off with the suplex off of the ropes, and definitely 3 checks on this one. Kip Sabian picks up the win, looks really good in the process, works gimmick. Him and Penelope Ford look wonderful together, and Michael Stevens definitely did himself favors with this debut, did a great job. Get a commercial for AEW Heels. I had an idea about AEW Heels in that regard. I feel like AEW Heels, they need somebody to do a review of it. I would certainly be happy to do it, but I may not be the person that they want to do it. But I think there's too much mystery associated with it, and people are getting hung up on the money part of it and all the rest of that. I mean, money is money, and it just depends what you find valuable. And I think AEW Heels, for their promos, have not done a great job of expressing what the true value of it is. And I think a review would go a long way to fixing that. especially a review where somebody put it as, I paid for AEW heels, so you perhaps don't have to. It's a very popular sort of YouTube format on things, and I think it could work very well for AEW heels. Next, we get Private Party against Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman. Griff Garrison comes to the ring and is doing this weird movie thing. I guess it's like, my hair is so good I should be in movies. I guess that's the implication. But then, as much as I thought, like, this is kind of silly, but then Brian Pillman Jr. came and backed him up and did it. Brian Pillman's such a pro, and Griff Garrison's really getting it. So then they made it like, oh, okay, they're two good-looking guys. Private Party. Private Party, I felt like they were getting better and better, and then last week their match completely fell apart in the way that their early matches tended to. This one, it was fine for the most part, though the dive to the floor onto Pillman Jr. looked ugly. That was not pretty. But then they win eventually, and it is what it is. I did give this thing 3 checks. I think Private Party obviously won. They looked improved over the last time, so I'll give them that middle check. And then Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman did what they needed to do and looked good in the process, so I gave them that 3rd check. Another commercial for the toys. Boy, they are pushing stuff. By the way, the interesting thing is what they promoted at the top of AEW. Sorry, I have it in my notes here instead of at the beginning for whatever the fuck reason. That Scorpio Sky promo was a big deal. Jurassic Express against Corey Hollis. Sorry, I know him, so I tend to only say first names. But Corey Hollis, Pineapple Pete, and Aaron Sorlo was one of the matches they promoted. And then SCU against Butcher and Blade. I found it really strange why they were pushing Jurassic Express as part of this thing, and they didn't bring up Penelope Ford against Rachel Ellering, which was close to a competitive match. Just strange choices, but then again, maybe they want to make sure people are looking at Jurassic Express since they're getting the tag team title shot and all that. Whatever. But we had Jurassic Express, all 3 of them, against Corey Hollis, Pineapple Pete, and Aaron Sorlo. Corey Hollis' spots really worked. He didn't have a lot to do here, but he got in that flippy kick thing that he does from the second rope that looks really stellar, especially when sold properly, and Jungle Boy's going to sell for you. And the move where he cut off somebody doing something to Aaron Sorlo from the turnbuckles. I think, again, Corey Hollis really got to put his thing over. Pineapple Pete obviously was the workhorse here, taking the finish, having to get pinned by Marco Stunt and all the rest of it. And Aaron Sorlo continues to improve because he continues to do less, but do what he's doing effectively, both as far as selling goes and his offense. Jurassic Express looked really good here. The only spot that I found really wonky was making Jungle Boy hold somebody up in a vertical suplex long enough for Marco Stunt to get it together and dive off of Luchasaurus' shoulders in a dive. One of those things that probably seemed really good on paper that just didn't. It was really clunky here. I would give this 2 checks. Definitely the first check, Jurassic Express won. They also got their stuff in more than almost anybody else. This was definitely we have to make sure Jurassic Express looks really, really great here. I don't think the 3 guys really came across as good as they could have. I would give it a tentative check. Certainly Pineapple Pete worked hard and did what he was asked. Corey Hollis got in a couple of things, but Aaron Sorlo seemed to kind of disappear in this match. I don't know, it's more of a vibe thing when it comes to the checks, and I just didn't feel like Corey Hollis, Pineapple Pete, and Aaron Sorlo. Definitely the match point was not about emphasizing them. So it's no knock. I mean, the first 2 checks are the important ones, but I don't feel like they were really helped or advanced in this thing. We get another commercial for All Out, the MJF promo. We're really setting up MJF and Moxley at All Out. Really good. The Hybrid 2 versus Natural Nightmares. I didn't have a lot of notes. It was just a well-done match. It's great to see Jack Evans. It's weird to see Jack Evans put in this position. You got to realize that this guy at one point was like the physical marvel in wrestling as far as what he could do in a ring. He's honestly a little ahead of his time. If his prime was now, and I'm not saying it's not, that guy can still do his thing, but it definitely feels like they're caught in a weird position where now there's a million tag teams in AEW of very high quality. And I don't know what the place for the Hybrid 2 is. I really don't. But the match is good. It's worked. I like Dustin not using the Canadian Destroyer in favor of kind of like a suplex into a neck breaker thing. I think it suits him much more. I think it's much better. And something else that's always very noticeable is how much bigger Dustin Rhodes is than everybody else. Boy, times have changed in wrestling. There was a time where me at 6 feet 240 was considered too small to be pro wrestler. Now I would be almost the tallest guy in the locker room. It's just really funny to me. 3 checks on this match. It was really good. It was a very competitive match, so that you're going to tend to do better on those. In fact, I should maybe not even use the 3 check system for this, but I'm going to give it to him. So we got another ad for the women for AEW heels. And then we've got Penelope Ford against Rachel Ellering. Rachel Ellering, do something about your fucking hair. It gets in the way of everything. It's very distracting. And it's even to the point where you can't see moves. Nothing wrong with having long hair. I'd say find a way to deal with it, because it gets in the way of everything, and it takes away from the match. Penelope Ford continues to just get better and better and better. Like she's very easy. It's very easy to visualize Penelope Ford working in the WWE or anywhere else that she wants to. She's got the look. She's got the chops in the ring. She's one of the 3 or 4 in the AEW women's division that you can say are truly world class. And yes, I'm saying it. Hikaru Shida, I think, has come and gotten there. Nyla Rose, after a really wonky beginning, is there. And Penelope Ford is definitely there as well. If you think there are others, please let me know. But those are the ones that I consider truly world class right now. One thing I noted during this match and throughout the night is that the crowd cares more and more. That I'm not catching people sleeping, or at least maybe they're editing those parts out better. But it seems like the crowd is being encouraged to be into what's going on, as well they should fucking be. And I'm glad to see it. Again, AEW continues to fix the problems, and that's why they are steadily improving in every way. And then finally, that match, I'm not even doing a check thing for that, nor am I going to do one for SCU against Butcher and Blade, because I consider them more competitive kind of matches. SCU against Butcher and Blade, really, really great. Really, really followed the structure of a tag match. The only note I have that's negative is Butcher and Blade's finisher now twice in a row has looked like dog shit. The suplex onto the knees, it looks dangerous, but it also looks ineffectual at all the same time. So that's the worst of all worlds. They have to tighten up on that thing. Either have Butcher's or Blade's knees up so the suplex can happen in the small and middle of the back at the same time, or come up with a different thing that you're putting him over that can be done safely, that doesn't look so reckless. It looks like they're one mistake away of a kneecap going to the wrong spot on the disc on somebody's spine of fucking somebody up. And for a move that doesn't look incredibly effective. So that's my only note. Beyond that, Butcher and Blade, I think, are really confident. I put them in the Penelope Ford category of they got a great deal of confidence, or people are like, oh, you built them up and beat them. But they gained something in those losses, and they gained they're next level up kind of people. And I really like Butcher and Blade. I actually think they're better without Bunny, which is I would never thought I said, because I think the world of Allie. I think she's a total babe for one thing, and tried to book her when she was Cherry Bomb all the time in PCW. But I mean, what she's doing with QT has made QT more interesting, makes her more interesting, and Butcher and Blade as a sort of tag team, this rough and tumble tag team, I think it really works. And they give them the Duke over SCU, so obviously they have designs for Butcher and Blade. And SCU, I mean, what can you say about Daniels and Kazarian? Nobody looks better in defeat. Nobody looks better in victory. They're just a great tag team and a great part of what AEW is doing. We get a commercial or a promotion for AEW Dynamite, which is happening tonight. We get Cody against Scorpio Sky. That's awesome. Orange Cassidy against Jericho. That's awesome. And then all the tag team appreciation stuff that's going down that I highlighted earlier. Anyway, this has been Platinum versus AEW Dark.